Alright, so you want to make huge gains on the bench press and be as strong as the top powerlifters, but you don't want to cheat and have a 2-inch range of motion. At the same time, you want to chest like Arnold? Well, in this case, you really can't have it all. Obviously, your genetics will limit you in some ways, and maybe you won't be a top powerlifter or bodybuilder. You can maximize your strength on the bench press and maximize your chest gains. The big misconception in powerlifting is that arching your back on the bench and widening your grip to reduce your range of motion is cheating. And another misconception is that benching like that is going to kill your chest gains. And then a third misconception is that having a 2-inch range of motion is the only way to be the best at benching. To address the first misconception, according to the powerlifting rules, bringing your chest close to the bar as possible while your butt remains on the bench is perfectly legal, except now in the IPF they have that elbow depth rule. But if you want to argue that the rules are flawed, that's a different topic. The point of this video is to show you that you can still grow your chest while benching like a powerlifter. Now, I'm not saying I'm very big, but my chest is definitely a strong point in my physique, and I'm not saying that I'm super strong, but compared to the top powerlifters in my age and weight class, I'd say I'm not too bad. Also, I'm not saying I have the best technique, but I think I've optimized it pretty well. Now, I'm not going to teach you how to bench with a 2-inch range of motion, since that's not going to help you grow your chest. Plus, you probably don't want to bench like that anyway. Even Sean Noriega, one of the top benchers in the 181-pound weight class, says that he hates benching like that. So to have an optimal bench, you don't necessarily have to have that much of a reduced range of motion. One of the best benchers in the world, and not just in the heavier weight classes, have a normal range of motion. And guess what a commonality between them is? They all have huge chests. Now, this could be total bro science or whatever, but it's pretty clear that your chest is going to get bigger if you have a huge bench. How do you get a big bench? It's pretty simple. For perfect bench technique, you need 3 key things. 1, scapular retraction and depression. 2, correct leg drive, because this is really easy to mess up. And then 3, a good bar path. So for the first one, scapular retraction and depression. If you have any shoulder pain from benching, this might solve it. It solved mine back when I used to not do this. If this doesn't solve it, then definitely go to a doctor. But this also reduces your range of motion, and once you start doing it correctly, you can probably add at least 10 pounds to your bench right away if you also use proper leg drive, which I'll get into in a bit. Basically, what scapular retraction is pulling your shoulders back like you're trying to pretty much crack a nut between your traps. To depress your scapula, just pull your shoulders and traps down a bit. Now, leg drive. Leg drive is basically pushing with your legs so that you can maintain position, arch more, and get a bit of a boost off your chest. Well, this sounds really amazing. The technique is kind of difficult to get down at first, but once you do it correctly, it's really easy. What I do is I drive my traps and neck into the bench and push with my legs like I'm going to push myself off the bench. And that's another thing too. If you want to do this without sliding off the bench, I recommend you wear a stringer or a sleeveless shirt, or just no shirt, so you can allow your shoulders and traps to have skin contact with the bench. This will make it seem like you stick to the pad despite your legs trying to push you off. You can also put resistance bands around the bench, or use a t-shirt like the A7 bar grip shirt, which does the same thing. Once you've done all this, you want to push with your legs and arch as much as you can while raising your butt as much as possible. Then, once you've unracked the bar, you want to lower your butt slowly until it's barely touching the bench. Keep your butt in the same position throughout the whole lift. When you bring the bar down to your chest, push a bit with your legs when you initiate the press for a bit of a boost. This technique allows your legs to keep that constant tension throughout the whole press, and it reduces your range of motion. A big mistake a lot of people make is pushing up with their legs instead of sideways. This is why a lot of beginners and even some elite lifters raise their butt on the bench. Even if you perfect your leg drive technique, it's really easy to make this mistake, and I make it sometimes too. Don't worry about it, but I recommend you do record yourself so you know when it happens, and then try to make sure it doesn't happen again. Right, so now that leg drive and scapular retraction have been covered, the next biggest thing to increase your bench press is bar path. If you don't have a 2-inch range of motion and you want to maximize your bench press, you need to optimize your bar path. Surprisingly, you don't want to bench straight up and down. You want your bar path to be sort of like a J shape, because you want to touch the bar a bit further down on your chest, and then you want to push it back up to where you started. You may think that you should just push in a slightly diagonal line, But for most elite powerlifters, this usually results in the initial press being a diagonal line and then the rest of the press being straight up. The only thing with this is that you really don't want to try and exaggerate this, because you'll most likely get injured from that. And this is one of those things that just improves over time. So if your press doesn't look exactly like this right now, just don't worry about it and just try to optimize your range of motion over time. Now, another part of the bench press that a lot of people get hung up on is grip width. Personally, I think it's just personal preference. Your range of motion will reduce if you go wider, but if it feels awkward, then don't do it. There are plenty of elite benchers who use a narrow grip with no issue at all. I personally use the widest legal grip, which is a pointer finger on the ring. That's only because I've gradually widened it over time and I'm just used to it. It's what feels the most comfortable for me. Alright, so now that you know the correct bench technique, the next most important factor in increasing your bench press is programming. If you don't know what programming is, it's basically setting up your training for the future. This is the best way to make gains, because just training however you want each session, it really won't work for a long period of time. An example of a basic bench press program is to do it twice a week, let's say Tuesday and Friday, and a typical mesocycle or a block of a program is 4 weeks. If you don't know what a mesocycle or block is, it's basically a period of time, usually 3 to 5 weeks, where in the first week you train the lightest, and then the last week you train the heaviest. So in a basic 4-week block for the bench press, where you're benching on Tuesdays and Fridays, you do 4 sets of 7 on Tuesday for your secondary day, and then on Friday, your primary day, you do a top single followed by 3 sets of 5. On week 1 of the block, you'd want to do this at RPE 6, which RPE is basically 10 minus reps in reserve. So RPE 6, you do 10 minus 4 reps in reserve, and that's how you get RPE 6. RPE 6 is 4 reps in reserve. Week 2 would be RPE 7, which is 3 reps in reserve. Week 3, RPE 8, 2 reps in reserves, and then week 4, the heaviest week, at RPE 9, which is 1 rep in reserve. Now, this is a really basic program, not really like what I do, but I bench 3 days a week, and on my tertiary day, I do a bench accessory, which is a 3-count descent, 3-count pause Larsen press, which means feet off the ground bench press. This is basically an accessory which makes the bench press a lot more difficult. If you can increase your strength in a more difficult version of the bench press, like the Larsen press that I do, or like a close grip bench press or something like that, it will have really good carryover to your normal bench. Now, the next step from here, after following like a really basic program, is to follow a really good program or to have a coach. Now, I'm going to be releasing a fully customizable course and program in the next couple months, so look out for that if you want. And with all these steps, you'll definitely make gains in both strength and size. If you have any questions, just leave a comment, and yeah, thanks for watching.